This is going to be my starter. It's 3/4 dry malt extract with 1/4 dextrose. Very well mixed up already. I'm going to put it straight into this 2-liter Erlenmeyer flask. I will then add boiling water and just leave it in there for a little while. 1.7 liters. And then I will cool it down in the sink before pouring in my yeast that I harvested from a previous batch. Otter number 1. Two things. Because I had mixed the dry malt extract and the dextrose together really well, it had almost no chance of clumping at the top. And of course I had nothing hot to create vapors or anything inside here. There was some star sand in there, just lining the edges. A couple more things. I've got it in there stirring right now. But I just want to say that I want to recommend that people stay away from this kind of a stir plate. They aren't very strong, so they don't grip the bar very well, so they tend to throw the bar, and then it's not stirring anymore. And, you know, for double, this is like 45 bucks. You spend 90 bucks, you can get a good, legitimate lab stir plate and have it work pretty well. So these things tend to be popular with home brewers, but I think that if I had it to do over with, and I wish I did, I would go straight for a much better one. The wort for the starter is at 21 degrees Celsius. Got all this yeast at the bottom. How am I going to get it off of there? I'm going to shake this up and I'll be right back. Oh, look at that. I got half of it. Didn't even have to shut off the camera. Looks like I got all of it in little chunks. Pour it in. Looks like I got it all, and so the starter is on the move. All right, let's take a look. 22 hours later, it's starting to ferment. 10 hours earlier, I was wondering if it was going to start at all. I thought maybe the yeast had frozen in my fridge or something and had died. So that confirms, in my view anyway, that there's very little yeast inside those vials. So it's a really good thing I'm making a decent-sized starter. By the way, let's take a good look at how clear this beer is. This was my Otter number 2. I think you can see through there, probably, maybe. And just over time, it just clears up so well. Wish it was like that the whole time. I guess I could condition it in the keg for a few weeks before taking the first glass. Time seems to be what matters most when it comes to clearing a beer. Of course, it had a Whirlflock tablet in the brew. There you have it. Here's my starter. As you can see, everything's, well, not completely settled out. It's still a little cloudy, but it's mostly settled out. And it's been in the fridge for about a day. I didn't put it in the fridge because I wanted it to settle out. I put it in the fridge just because I didn't want it being warm until I was going to use it, and I knew I was going to use it today. Now maybe that's a mistake, and in the future I should just leave it out. And I am going to get it all stirred up again, which is another reason why maybe I should have just left it out. But before I do that, I am going to give it a taste test. Because it occurred to me, if you can taste test it, then you should taste test it. Because what if your starter's infected? It could happen, right? Just tastes like flat beer. So now, I get to put it back on the stir plate. And away she goes. Got my beer book here, reminding me of what Cascade, Otter Cascade number 1 was, and number 2 was. And this is what is going in this one. 6 pounds of Maillard malts Otter, 1.5 pounds of dextrose. That'll be a late addition. On top is a Whirlflock tablet. They're both going in at 8 minutes. And I have 4 ounces of Cascade, which I've divided into two 2-ounce portions. One of the portions will be going in for 30 minutes. The other portion will be going in, well, I'll show you on this chart here. Okay, so I've got it back to a boil. I started out with 2 gallons of boiling water, then I added a half gallon of SMaSH Otter, used another half gallon to rinse out the container. Boy, did that come clean. On a sad note, I just barely pulled off the cap to fill up with SMaSH Otter. That's as far as it got, and then it petered out. I am now empty of my second batch of SMaSH Otter Cascade. This is after about 12 days, and you can see it's not level, and every once in a while it gives a little blurp. I just wonder if I've underpitched, if I just don't have enough yeast in spite of using that 2-liter starter. Let's take a look at my hop strategy. The first time I made one of these SMaSH Otter Cascades, I put 1 ounce in at 60 minutes. I put 1.5 ounces in at 10 minutes, so right here 1.5, and I put 1.5 ounces in at 1 minute. So you can kind of get an idea. Wow, that's not a very good 5, is it? Okay, you can kind of get an idea of what the flavor profile maybe could have been. Like 10 minutes, that's right up here. It had almost no bitterness in it, and that could be because I used all extract, so there was quite a bit of residual sugar left in there to counteract the bitterness. In any case, I wanted more bitterness, so what I did, and by the way, I think it had some aroma, but I don't think it had much in the way of flavor. So what I did was I changed the amount at 60 minutes to 2 ounces, and then I put 1 ounce in at 20 minutes, and I put 1 ounce in right here at the top of these curves at 8 minutes. And the idea was to try to get the most out of all of them with an emphasis on the bitterness. But what I ended up with is something that I don't think it had any aroma, and I don't know that it had any flavor either. Maybe I'm just not accustomed to knowing what Cascade should taste like. But there was enough bitterness there. In fact, I'd kind of like the bitterness to be backed off a little bit. So this time what I'm going to do is put 2 ounces in at 30 minutes, right at this nexus, and I'm going to put 2 ounces in at 13 minutes. So 2 ounces times 50%, that's about the same as putting 1 ounce in at 60 minutes, it would seem to me. Just based on how these curves look, assuming these curves are accurate in any way. And then I've got a way of getting some aroma and some flavor out of it, and that's all I'm hoping to do with this. So here we go. This is SMaSH Otter number 3, SMaSH Otter Cascade. See all that yeast? It's all falling. That's because I just lifted. I got a bit of Cooper's going right there. I just lifted it up out of its light protective box and put it up here. I was about to keg it. Maybe I'm going to anyway. But when I did that, all this yeast fell from the top, probably Krausen collar area. And you got some similar appearance to what the last was. Alright, other than that yeast that's falling, this beer is super, super, super clear. So I've turned off the lights down here. See if we can see these 3 lights. I think you can barely make out that there's 3 of them through the camera. But believe me, not through the camera, just looking at it straight, it is so, so, so clear. Oh, excuse the mess in here. This is big time messy. But I managed to get it out with very little loss of beer. and almost no, or very little, yeast inside the keg. I guess I'll be carbing this, 30 pounds. I just leave it while it's warm, does fine, and then if I leave it a few days while it's warm, at least a couple, at 30 pounds of pressure, then when I put it in the kegerator at 30 pounds of pressure, for just 1 day, that's all it takes. Down here, I'm making a video about this one. That is Old Irish Stout from Cooper's. Quite old. So I'll be making a video about that. Up here we have I'm going to make a filtering chain using the filter system that they sell. It's Northern Brewer. And I'm going to put that in sequence with it so that I can filter 5 micron first and 1 micron second. I'll be making a video about that. It is now time to pour. It has been 26 days since I brewed this. Not quite sure what to expect from the pour because I shake carbonated it. I had actually put it in under what I thought was 30 pounds of pressure in the kegerator. Yeah, no foam. Had this little thing turned like this with it off, and so it was in there not carbonating when I thought it was carbonating. It's going to take me a minute to get fully attuned to this. As I recall, I was trying to bring out a little bit more of the flavor, so I put in 2 ounces of hops for 30 minutes, which, according to this chart, gives a balanced... Well, it's just sort of where the curves meet for bitterness and flavor. And then I put 2 ounces in at 13 minutes, which is where the 2 curves meet for aroma and flavor. So I was kind of hoping to bring out a lot of flavor. And I may have done that, because it is kind of flavorful. Almost no bitterness at all. Really, that's really weird. That's the weird thing to me. There is like no bitterness. And is there aroma? I'm not sure. But I sure figured out a way to get some kind of flavor. I'm not sure what it is, though. It's supposed to be citrusy. I don't know. And I think I might be able to tell that it's Maris Otter. Yeah, probably, but the flavor of the hops is kind of covering it up. What's interesting is that I just finished. Here's all my brew equipment up here. Going to get started on this in a couple of days. But that keg right there just emptied of some of this. And what's interesting about this is it tasted very much like my single malt, single hop Cascade Maris Otter. And it kind of had a weaker flavor, a weaker Maris Otter flavor, if I'm identifying that flavor correctly. And I think I am. But it was almost like I had my Maris Otter out here already. It's kind of an annoying thing. I had a beer called the Aries Bière de Mars in one keg, and it ran out 2 nights ago. And then last night, my Cooper's Sparkling Ale ran out. So 2 days in a row, after just one and a half on one night and 2 on the other night, pours, my kegs ran out. So I had to get this one going. Had the little problem with the carbonation. Maybe I'll give it a few more shakes. But yeah, that I definitely created something different from the first 2. And so this experiment with hops, using the same ingredients every time, same amount of the ingredients every time, but just changing how long I have the hops in the boil, it's really making for some different beers, and it's a good way to learn. So I hope some of you out there might think it's a good idea and try it yourself. I still consider myself a new home brewer because I really don't know a whole lot, even though I've been doing this, what, a year and a half now, I think? This is some good stuff. It's going to go down too quick. All right, finally got that edited. If you'd like to see the very first Otter homebrew video, it's at the top right. If you would like to see the first in a series of weight loss videos using homebrew, you can check out the bottom right. And to subscribe, it's over on the left. See ya.